You know, I was just taking a look at my tick sheet here, and somebody had asked me, hang on a minute. Somebody had asked me, I got to read it again. Excuse me. Oh yeah, okay, twin flames. Place of the intellect during spiritual awakening. Ooh, place of the intellect during spiritual awakening. Okay, I like this one. All right. Again here, in doing this video, I want everybody to understand that I'm not nitpicking at people, and I'm not trying to, belittle people or and that kind of stuff. What I'm trying to do here is to be helpful, and as most of you know, I'm very blunt, and I keep it as simple as possible. I don't know any other way to talk, but simply, and hopefully more people will understand what I'm saying. And you will notice on our channel especially, there's no bells and whistles. What you see is what you get, kind of deal. So if you can handle that, you can probably handle this video. All right, one of the things that I've learned about our educational system in three-dimensional reality is basically the intellectual capacity is something that many people strive for. The educational system actually is programmed to create that. The more and the higher you go through the educational system, the more dependent you become upon the intellectual capacity. And there is nothing wrong with the intellectual capacity. The problem is, in our society right now, it's the dominant part that seems to run our consciousness in regards and in cooperation with the mental body. Put the mental body and intellectual capacity together, man, you could have a mouse chasing a peanut around a room and trying to figure out why it's doing it for the next 20 years. Now, that wasn't very complimentary towards the intellect, but I was trying to make a point. One of the things that I have noticed, and this happens a lot with people who have gone through higher education. Now, don't get me wrong here. I am not knocking higher education. What I'm saying to you is the intellectual capacity is more counted upon the higher you go in the educational system. And I can recall at one particular point, I'm going to tell you this story. I think you'll get a little bit of a bash out of it. At one point in time, there used to be an organization, especially here in Canada, called the Kundalini Research Network. And somehow or other, being relatively uneducated, trust me, I am, which is probably a good thing, because it leaves my consciousness more open to important stuff, real important stuff. But anyways, I got invited to go to this conference, and what they had there was they had on the panel, they had MAs and BAs, and they had every kind of degree you could possibly imagine, especially from psychology to physiology, you name it, they were all there. And they were all talking about Kundalini phenomena. And as I'm sitting there and I'm kind of wondering, what the hell am I doing here? Because all they were doing is sitting around and there's intellectual jibber jabber was going on and on and on and on and on. And I said to myself, well, I think I made a bad choice coming to this particular thing. But I got to tell you this because it's funny. Anyway, somehow or other, as a guest, I got invited to, as a guest panelist, to sit on the panel with all of these, degrees and titles and whatever the hell else they had. So I'm sitting down on the end and had all of the big wheels sitting kind of the most important big wheel in the middle. And everybody's introducing themselves one at a time, and of course, they've got to go through their resume of whatever they are, and as they're going through them, I'm sitting there and I'm saying, oh my God, and I never even finished high school. What am I going to do now? So anyways, as they got, I just started laughing before I even get there. as they started, got down to toward the end of getting to me, and you can imagine there was about 6 or 7 of us on the panel. All of them introduced themselves. It's come down to me, and the head speaker said, well, we want to introduce our guest panelist, Mel Brand. And I said, hi, everybody. I'm Mel Brand, AR. And there was kind of a little bit of a question for a moment of silence. And the head panelist, he said to me, he said, kind of looked my way and said, what does the AR stand for, Mel? And I went like this. All right. Well, I think about half the people in the audience left because they had to go for a leak because I completely cracked them up. All right. So much for the intellectually. All right. Mel Brand. All right. I dig it. So anyways, it was quite an experience. But anyways, to kind of get into the video, I just wanted to throw that one in there so we can get everybody kind of cranked up a little bit and the right idea. The aspect here is this is with, I noticed this in the twin flame community, but I noticed a lot in the spiritual community as a general rule. What people are doing is, as something is unfolding within their consciousness, or they've had an experience within their consciousness, or something is going on through their body, what they're trying to do is to use the intellectual capacity to intellectualize or figure out what is happening, what is going to happen, what is going to be the outcome. And you know where this training all comes from. And I see this all the time with people who are having, especially when they have a spiritual awakening, Kundalini, and heart center activation going along. They're trying to figure it out, what's going to happen. They're trying to figure out when they're going through something, what's happening. And then they want to know what's going to be the outcome. One of the things that I've learned in going through spiritual awakening is this. And I don't know if I'm going to put this into words the right way. Over the years, I've heard the term many, many times in many spiritual communities, and even in websites and even on YouTube, where people will say we're becoming multidimensional beings. But you know what? People are using that word. I don't think they know what it actually means. A multidimensional being, by definition. How can you possibly be a multidimensional being if you're trying to figure out the expression of consciousness at a higher level in vibration by using an intellectual capacity that is limited to a 3D learning process? I mean, this don't take rocket science here. I mean, I'm just a country bumpkin and I figured it out. So I see a lot of people doing this. And what I learned a while ago, point number one, it doesn't matter what's happening in my life. When I ask questions or want answers or whatever using the intellectual capacity, or what am I going through now, or what's going to happen, or what's going to be the outcome, all I'm going to do is to make myself crazy because I don't get any answers. Because at a multidimensional level, it is more important that I experience, okay, remember that word? This word, experience, what I'm going through, how I'm going through it, and what is taking place within my embodiment so that I can gain experience. The intellectual capacity has no place here. All it's going to do is get you more and more frustrated, give you higgits, okay, higgits? Or you don't know what a higgit is, okay. A higgit, it's spelled H-I-G-G-E-T, higgit. Or you want to know what the meaning is, okay. It's halfway between a pain in the ass and a headache. It's called a higgit. How does that grab you? So if you've had a Higgit a lot of times, now you know why, because you're too hooked on the intellectual capacity. So remember that. What is a Higgit? A Higgit is halfway between a pain in the ass and a headache. Somewhere right about there. Okay? So, anyway, to further along with this humorous journey through multidimensional consciousness, what I've learned over the years is to do this. When something is happening, and I have a very strong intellectual capacity, trust me, and I'm not educated through the system. So my intellectual capacity is not all bent out of shape by training. So what I have learned to do is, as I'm going through something, I allow myself to explore the experience without formulating opinions, looking at what's happening, why it's happening, until the experience comes to an end. Inevitably, and I know exactly when it's coming to the end because I can feel it. I have learned that knowing that what's happening is sooner or later, I am going to get, do you remember sometimes some of you get downloads? Okay, you call them downloads, or you hear these high-pitched frequency hums in your head that suddenly just really get your attention, and you'll hear this hum or a buzz or whatever it is, different kind of sound, and it's really profound. Okay? Do you know what that is? That's information coming to you as an energy waveform, if you will. Your brain, that thing most of us don't use that much in here, two parts of our head, one called masculine, one called feminine. The brain, now coming together through spiritual awakening, together through spiritual awakening, together through spiritual awakening, picks up the frequency of that sound, and within a relatively short space of time, guess what's going to happen? 99.9% of the time, within a day or two, a few hours, a week, or a month, you're going to have a revelation, an inspiration, or some kind of intellectual deciphering of that experience or that download or that event or circumstances that you went through. And the intellectual capacity is going to give you a full explanation of what you went through, what happened, and how it happened, and everything that you need to know from that higher state of consciousness, supermind, or oversoul, or God, or whatever label you want to call it. You get it incorporated. And after a while, once you learn this, you will understand exactly what you're going through, why you're going through it, and how you're going to go through it by the use of the intellectual capacity. So in other words, what I'm saying, people, is very simple. The intellectual capacity is a very valuable commodity within the human consciousness of us in three-dimensional reality. But it also has a place in higher states of consciousness. The problem is it's become solely dependent on what's going on here in three-dimensional reality, but it functions even better at a higher dimensional state of consciousness as, pay attention here, the voice of the soul. Pay attention here. As the voice of the soul. That's what the intellectual capacity is. Spiritual evolution transitions the evolutionary process, or excuse me, the intellectual process, the intellectual capacity, to the voice of the soul. How does this happen? How does this happen? I'll explain it to you. Do any of you remember the changes that happened in your emotional body? Do any of you remember the changes that happened to you in your mental body? that was for exactly that purpose. So the intellectual capacity could decipher, attune, connect to the emotional body, to the mental body, to the soul body. Voila! You have transformation taking place at a very important level. Part of all of this is so you can do something. What? You can now get involved in a process where you can actually learn how to communicate with other people at a higher vibration, where you can navigate through the complications and the difficulties and the challenges that will come up between the dynamic connection of two people at a much higher vibration of consciousness and layer of intelligence. Not to mention negotiation, compromise. Take a look at the world around us right now, today. What are the big problems in every way you see? Take a look at what's going on in the world. Take a look at what's going on between negotiations between countries, negotiations between people, communication, compromise, all of these things. Everything has to turn into a Pier 6 brawl or a war. That is not the way of the future, people. The way of the future is being created now by understanding what we're going through and the evolution and opening the doorway to the higher part of the intellectual capacity that has moved beyond the framing and the forming of the three-dimensional educational system, which is primitive, in my opinion. The educational system that we have right now is primitive to what it's going to be in the next 10 years. You're going to see significant changes in the next 5. And those changes are not going to come easy, because there's a lot of people who like the status quo to remain the same. And there's going to be a lot of kicking and screaming and foot dragging, but it's going to happen right now. Let me kind of leave you with a final thing that really blew me away the other day. It's kind of a little bit off topic, but I want to add this in. I've been watching the news, and I guess everybody knows we have this new virus floating around, and it originated in China. And we also have this thing called climate change going on. Right? I just caught it on the news here the other day that since this new virus has shown up, that the greenhouse gas production in China has dropped 25% in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. There are people who are astounded, scientists that are astounded that this could have happened in 3 weeks. You see? Do you see what I see? Do you sense what I sense? Do you feel what I feel? Trust your intuition, self-awareness, and your intellectual capacity will develop and grow. If you need help in doing that, I can help you. twinflames.ca. You know where to find me. Or Nicole. We're here. Have a great day, everyone.